Okay, tonight is Mosiah chapter 13.
And now when the king had heard these words, he said unto his priests, Away with this fellow, and slay him. For what have we to do with him? For he is mad. And they stood forth, and attempted to lay their hands on him. But he withstood them, and said unto them, Touch me not, for God shall smite you, if ye lay your hands upon me. For I have not delivered the message which the Lord sent me to deliver. Neither have I told you that which ye requested that I should tell. Therefore God will not suffer that I shall be destroyed at this time. But I must fulfill the commandments wherewith God has commanded me, and because I have told you the truth, ye are angry with me. And again, because I have spoken the word of God, ye have judged me that I am mad.
As I asked you earlier, right, whether, the kind of things that Abinadi was saying would make him more or less popular with the audience there, well, clearly less popular. And so now that he's kind of taking a breath here, so the king has heard these words, he says, this guy's out of his mind, right? He's saying all these things to me, the king, and to all of the leaders here. He's crazy. Let's kill him, right? Because we don't want to hear this anymore. Why should we hear this kind of garbage, somebody dare speak to us this way, right? So they basically came forward to kill him, and with, I guess, some level of authority, he says, you better not touch me, because, God sent me to deliver a message, and I haven't finished giving it yet. Right? So, and again, it's not saying that he's invincible for good, but saying for right now, God has brought me here with a message, and so until I finish giving the message, you really can't hurt me, because God's not going to let this message go undelivered. God will not suffer, I shall be destroyed at this time. Okay, so I have to fulfill the commandments that God has sent me here to tell you about. Why is everybody so angry here, right? I'm just talking the truth. So, but you're judging me that I'm mad and so forth, because you don't want to hear this truth. It's not really what you're looking to hear. So therefore, now I'm a crazy person, and now you want to kill me. But for now, until I finish, you better not touch me, because God's not going to allow it. People believed that. Again, you would have to wonder, well, maybe they think, gee, maybe this really is a prophet, right? Because they all back down at that point. So I guess he spoke with enough authority that they all back down. That nobody's touching them now.
Now it came to pass, after Abinadi had spoken these words, that the people of King Noah durst not lay their hands on him. For the Spirit of the Lord was upon him, and his face shone with exceeding luster, even as Moses did while on the mount of Sinai, while speaking with the Lord. And he spake with power and authority from God, and he continued his words, saying, Ye see that ye have not power to slay me. Therefore I finish my message. Yea, and I perceive that it cuts you to your hearts, because I tell you the truth concerning your iniquities.
Abinadi said these words, he says, guess what? No one would touch him, right? It says they all stood back, and they, even to look at him, they saw something was different now. It says his face shone with luster, right? It says, and he compared it to the way Moses looked when he came down from the mountain with the Ten Commandments. Right? And just even the way that he spoke, so with power and authority, I guess they recognized that. So that suddenly he looked different, he sounded different, and so yeah, they weren't going to touch him, because these are just weak guys that are just out to make a fast buck. And then here's somebody really a man of God, and so they really had no feeling like they could do anything to him. Okay, so and then 7 says, so you see, he says, you have no power to slay me. All right, so that therefore I get to finish what I came here to say. Right? And if you're upset about it, it's because the truth hurts, is the saying, because I'm telling you the truth concerning your iniquities. Right? So if you're mad at me, it's not because of what I'm saying per se, it's because you don't like applying that to yourself.
Yea, and my words fill you with wonder and amazement, and with anger. But I finish my message, and then it matters not whither I go, if it so be that I am saved. But this much I tell you, what you do with me after this shall be as a type and a shadow of things which are to come.
Basically saying, now I'm going to continue with what I came here to say, right? I'm going to finish my message, and then after that, then it doesn't matter what happens, right? So in other words, he's saying that you have no power to touch me now or to kill me now. He says, but I'm going to finish my message, and then whatever happens, happens. But what you do to me, expect to get something similar happening to you at some point, right? That's what a type and a shadow would be in this case. So so if you want to kill me, go ahead. But you're going to wind up with a similar fate. So just understand that, right? So again, imagine that kind of a little almost a threat there, right? Say that what's going to happen to you. So go ahead and take your best shot, but no, you're going to get the same at some point. So this is the man of God, and so he's going to finish the message now. They have no power over him for right now, and then we'll see what happens when his message is done.
And now I read unto you the remainder of the commandments of God, for I perceive that they are not written in your hearts. I perceive that ye have studied and taught iniquity the most part of your lives. And now, you remember that I said unto you, Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness, or things which are in heaven above, or which are in the earth beneath, or which are in the water under the earth. And again, thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generations of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments.
Now that little drama is out of the way, right, now he's ready to continue. It says, now I'm going to go through the remainder of the Ten Commandments here at the end of the prior chapter. That Abinadi was starting to go through the Ten Commandments with them, I guess maybe to point out how they were not keeping them, right? And so he did number one, number two, and as soon as he said, are you keeping these? No, you're not keeping them. Are you teaching them? No, you're not, right? That's when they jumped in, kill him, this guy's crazy, right? And so they were ready to grab him. So he wasn't done, he was only up to number two. So they were ready to kill him, right? And then he says, no, you're not killing me till I'm done, because God's power is upon me. And so once all that was done, he said, okay, now we're going to pick up with the rest, all right? So let's see. Well, you can see, okay, now where was I? That's right, I was talking about the graven image stuff, all right? And don't make any graven images, right? Because God is a jealous God, right? And so, you think of God being a jealous God. Sometimes we think of the word jealous is not, among people, is not a good thing, right? When you say that, if you're jealous of somebody, but it says in the scripture that God is a jealous God. He wants to be first. Yeah, he doesn't want anything coming before him, right? So yeah, he wants to be first in your heart. And
He's the maker.
He's the maker, the creator, that's right. Okay, so right, he wants to be first. So right, so it says he's a jealous God. Anything that you want to put ahead of him, he's jealous about that. He wants to be first in your life. That was all part of the commandment number two. That was in the Bible in Exodus when as Moses was explaining it, right? And so now here it's being quoted back by Abinadi, and that's what it says. The Lord thy God is a jealous God, right? So he expects to come first. And now when it says it's visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations and so forth, things that we may do wrong affect our families, right? And further, if somebody says hates God, right, as it says at the end of 13, them that hate me, right? Well, somebody who hates God is not going to teach their children about God, right? And to teach them the opposite. So therefore, now their children will grow up either not believing in God or hating God, and so it would be a long time for that would get straightened out. So that's really what it's about. It's not that God's taking out a punishment on somebody's children or grandchildren, right? But rather just what the person does wrong will affect their families. So yeah, so again, but on the flip side, and on 14, it says, showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Somebody who's a godly person can have a positive effect on their families, all right? Both they're being blessed as a family, and they're being taught, and they're seeing good things from people of God. So we have an effect on our children and grandchildren by the way that we live, either positive or negative.
Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day, the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and the sea, and all that in them is. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and hallowed it.
Now we said prior to this that we had covered commandments number 1 and 2. Verse 15 is commandment number 3. It says, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Right? The name of the Lord should be called upon in a reverent manner, right? And so that you don't curse in the name of God. You bless the name of God, and you bless people in the name of God. So that's what God's looking for there. Right? And now 16 to 19 it refers to it says remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you labor and do your work. The seventh day, which is the Sabbath, you don't work. All right. Now, what day of the week is the Sabbath? The way the week was laid out, Sunday being the first day of the week. Right. That says that the first 6 days God did His work. The seventh day He rested. All right. So that the seventh day or the Saturday that becomes the Sabbath, and so those who are like your Orthodox Jews still recognize Saturday as the Sabbath, right? That their time of rest is from not midnight, but the sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. That's their period of the Sabbath. Okay, so that's the Sabbath as was established in the Old Testament times, right? But that became part of the Jewish heritage, that they kept the Sabbath in that way. And now once it got to the New Testament times, though, remember there was times when Jesus was going around healing the sick and so forth, and so those who were trying to keep these strict rules of Jesus, oh, you're a sinner because you did something on the Sabbath, right? Yeah, he healed somebody who was sick, right? So they were trying to say that he was doing bad things because he was healing somebody on the Sabbath, and so then probably said, look, he says the Sabbath was made for man, not the other way around, right? So the idea is that you don't use it necessarily to work for yourself, but certainly working for God is a good thing, right? And so he said, if your animal fell in the pit, on the Sabbath, would you leave it there and say, I'll come back and get you tomorrow, or you pull it out today? And so he gave examples like that. So really the strict keeping of a Sabbath that way kind of faded out in the New Testament time, right? It was replaced by a day of God, which became the first day of the week, which was Sunday, right? So that's why in Christian times then Sunday becomes our day that we recognize as the special day of the week. And it kind of is nice that it's the first day of the week, because then you're putting God first. See, so you're recognizing God on the first day of the week instead of the last day of the week. So the idea of all the don't work on the Sabbath and so forth, that was mostly an Old Testament thing, and so again, those are the Orthodox Jews still try to recognize that a little bit, right? But mainly that we recognize Sunday as the day of the Lord, and so that we get together on the Lord's Day, and we try to have Sunday be our special day of the week for that. So that's what that's about. But yeah, if anybody would ask you what the Sabbath is, the Sabbath day actually was Saturday, the seventh day of the week.
Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's.
This is the next several commandments, and so we'll just kind of take them one by one briefly. So in verse 20 it says, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Even if you may consider your parents not honorable, still for the sake of God, that we honor them for who they are, right? The people who brought us into the world. So again, their behavior may not be honorable, and we may perhaps not even have a relationship with them, but we just recognize them for who they are. Hopefully we all have had parents that have been at least reasonably good to us in raising us and providing for us, but again, regardless, God just wants us to recognize them for who they are and bring us into the world. Right? And notice that it says that those who would do that, it says that your days may be long upon the land, right? So it was actually even saying back then that there was like a little reward that went with that, right? At least at the time, he was putting out that kind of an incentive that I guess those, perhaps in the Old Testament times, would honor their parents, their days would be long, and a lot of people had really long lives at that time. So what it says in 21, it says, thou shalt not kill. Now what happens with soldiers who go to war, usually interpret this kind of thing about, substitute the word murder for kill, I guess, murder would be something else. You're killing for personal reasons, right? If you're in a war, you're in an army. This is what's expected, and as was already said, there were plenty of times in the scriptures that even the righteous were in the army, and God blessed the righteous army to be able to kill the other side. So yeah, so in a war, that's not what this is talking about. So, okay. Right, and then 22 it says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal." That's two in one verse. Right, and so the adultery one, again, we know what that is, right? But it's funny how Jesus even made it more to the point, in terms of those who were just going to go by the letter of the law. It says, hey, if you're even thinking of these kind of things, you're guilty. So he says he wanted to, the people to act right when it came to this kind of thing. Right, and it says that thou shalt not steal. Of course, it's taking something that belongs to somebody else, which there's a lot of ways that people might do that they might think that is an innocent thing, but if we want to be above reproach, we want to do the best we can to not participate in that sort of thing. 23 says about bearing false witness against your neighbor. So the simple term is lying, okay, but yet if you read what this is saying, it says bearing false witness against your neighbor, which to me would mean saying something about somebody else that's not true. Or it's to say somebody did something when they didn't do it, or try to get them in trouble, or whatever, to say things about somebody that's not true. That's really what this is more or less talking about. Verse 24 is the last of the commandments, and this is about coveting your neighbor's house or wife or any of these other things. All right, that this is something that can often get us into trouble. Right, when you see something somebody else has and you want it. I mean, even if you don't want that particular thing, I mean that's more or less this is pointing at. If you want, obviously your neighbor only has one wife, so if you want your neighbor's wife, that's what it's talking about. But a lot of times that we're affected by what others may have. That's because somebody else has a big house, I want a big house, or because somebody has an expensive car, I want an expensive car, or nice clothes, or whatever. So there's times that we can be affected by who's around us, and again, to me, that's not necessarily healthy, right? That it's nice to have nice things, but I would say, well, I want it more because so and so has it. I mean, if you want something, that's fine, but not to be motivated by somebody else, I think. So anyways, these are the commandments, and we're familiar with them all, the 10 Commandments, and so that this was the basis of the law of Moses, and it started out with this. And I assume these were things that were issues of the time, but a lot of them are continue to be valid today, and then the rest of the law of Moses was built upon this. Okay, so this was Abinadi telling the people the 10 Commandments here. They weren't following them, they weren't teaching them, right? But yet the priests were claiming that they taught the law of Moses, but yet it says now you're not even keeping it. So this is the beginning of the law of Moses right here. So let's just talk through this and see if you're even keeping these things. So the fact that he's listing these things probably tells us that he knew or was inspired that even the priests were not keeping even all of these 10 Commandments that were listed.
And it came to pass that after Abinadi had made an end of these sayings, that he said unto them, Have ye taught this people that they should observe to do all these things, for to keep these commandments? I say unto you, Nay, for if ye had, the Lord would not have caused me to come forth and to prophesy evil concerning this people. And now ye have said that salvation cometh by the law of Moses. I say unto you that it is expedient that ye should keep the law of Moses as yet, but I say unto you that the time shall come when it shall no more be expedient to keep the law of Moses.
All right, so in 25 and 26, it sounds like he's mainly speaking to the king and the priests, right? Those who should have been the teachers of the law. It says, have you taught this people that they should observe to do all these things and to keep these commandments? Right? And so they says, no, you haven't, because if you had, then God wouldn't have sent me to give this message, right? Because God sent him as a prophet to deliver this message to the people. And so if they didn't need it, I mean, why would God have sent it? He's not in the business of telling people things that they don't need to know, or trying to correct people on things that they're not doing wrong. So clearly he had a reason to send this message to them. So that's why he sent. So that's why I can say, are you keeping these commandments or teaching them? No, you're not, because that's why I'm here. Right? And so now when he goes into 27, it says, you already said in an earlier verse that salvation comes by the law of Moses, right? And now he says it's expedient that you should keep the law of Moses now, but the time shall come when it will no longer be expedient to keep the law of Moses, and that time is when? The coming of Christ, right? That then, in particular after the crucifixion and resurrection, that then it would no longer be, it says, expedient to keep the law of Moses. Saying that, right now, you should keep the law of Moses, but the time will come when it's no longer going to work out to do that, right? It's no longer going to work out. And because Jesus is going to simplify it down to 2, right? Because that's what happened. Jesus simplified it down to 2 commandments. Love God above all, love your neighbor as yourself. So then it would no longer be very simple to try to keep 600 laws, or even to go through all the various things that were written, because it wouldn't be necessary. It wouldn't be necessary because Jesus would be simplifying it. So you would just do the things that Jesus taught, and then you would automatically be doing the rest of it. See, that's the important part, is that at no time is anybody saying that the things of the law of Moses are no longer valid, right? That these 10 commandments that we just read, right? I mean, they're all still good commandments and good things to do or not do, right? But if you love God above all and love your neighbor as yourself, then you're keeping all these things. Because if you love God above all, well, then you're putting him first. Then you're not taking his name in vain. Right? If you love your neighbor, you're not killing him or stealing from him or coveting his stuff or anything like that. Okay, so you you automatically keep them if you follow the two commandments of Christ.
And moreover, I say unto you, that salvation doth not come by the law alone, and were it not for the atonement which God himself shall make for the sins and iniquities of his people, that they must unavoidably perish, notwithstanding the law of Moses. And now I say unto you, that it was expedient that there should be a law given to the children of Israel, yea, even a very strict law, for they were a stiff-necked people, quick to do iniquity, and slow to remember the Lord their God. Therefore there was a law given them, yea, a law of performances and of ordinances, a law which they were to observe strictly from day to day, to keep them in remembrance of God and their duty towards him. But behold, I say unto you, that all these things were types of things to come.
In 28, he's reinforcing the fact that salvation does not come by the law alone, right? Because up until here, they were saying that salvation can come by the law of Moses because that's all that you know, right? But now it's saying, were it not for the atonement, which means when Christ comes to pay for everybody's sins, it says that all the people must unavoidably perish, notwithstanding the law of Moses. Up until the time of Christ, how many of the people before him were in heaven? Nobody, see? So nobody could get there without Christ, all right? So that if there was never going to be Christ coming, then nobody could go to heaven. Okay, so it says in spite of the law of Moses, in spite of keeping the rules, so that nobody could qualify for the kingdom of heaven without Christ coming. So, it's an interesting way of putting it now. I mean, we look at it from this side of time, knowing that it's already in the past, and so then we can speak with confidence that Christ has already made a way for us to go to the kingdom of heaven, right? But so if you put yourself before Christ and say that if there was a possibility that he wouldn't have come, which we know was the plan of God that he was going to, so it's a moot point to say he would never come, but if there was never an atonement, that there couldn't be any salvation, because nobody could be perfect enough to enter the kingdom of heaven. But now in 29, he's talking just a little bit more, 29 and 30, talking a little bit more about some of these laws and why they were made. It says, it's expedient that a law should be given the children of Israel. It says a very, very strict law, right? But there was a reason for it. They actually asked for the Ten Commandments at the beginning, right? Because, and I think for some of the reasons that you're saying, that they saw, again, whether it was themselves or other people getting worse, or that felt like everybody was out of control. Well, now that we need rules, and so perhaps the people at that time, because they were stiff-necked people, that they may not have been ready for even like the Christ-like two commandments that covers everything. Maybe they couldn't define that well enough to say, well, they wanted to, as it says in verse 30, it says a law of performances and ordinances, which to me means something that you can measure. When you say, that thou shalt not steal, right? Well, then, you can say either you're stealing or you're not stealing, right? So I mean, it's something that can be measured. But if you say, love your neighbor as yourself, well, how do you know if you're doing it well enough? How can you say, you get a 48 on the love scale and you get an 85, right? You can't tell. So there was no performance level that could be measured with that. So it sounded like because they were stiff-necked people, it says quick to do iniquity, slow to remember God, that they needed that kind of a performance level to say either you're keeping the rule or you're not keeping the rule. So he's saying that they needed it, they wanted it, and then they needed it because of the way that they were. So they even asked for it, and they got it. Now in 31 it says, behold, I say unto you that all these things were types of things to come. Right? And we've said before that a type is something that kind of foretells things that are coming. Right? I assume all these things that there were laws given and so forth, and that the people were quick to do iniquity, slow to remember God. Right now, if we remember who it is that it's being given to, it's the house of Israel, right? That was given the Ten Commandments and given the law of Moses. And over time, Israel would continue to be a stiff-necked people, quick to do iniquity, slow to remember God, not recognizing Christ. So I mean, I'm thinking that it's a type of the fact that even through the future from here, that they would continue to be in that mode. And a lot of what we've read indicates that we, as even down to today, have a mission to recover Israel and bring them to a knowledge of Christ. This is a type of the way Israel would be throughout the years.
And now, did they understand the law? I say unto you, nay, they did not all understand the law. and this because of the hardness of their hearts. For they understood not that there could not any man be saved, except it were through the redemption of God. For behold, did not Moses prophesy unto them concerning the coming of the Messiah, and that God should redeem his people? Yea, and even all the prophets who have prophesied ever since the world began, have they not spoken more or less concerning these things? Have they not said that God himself should come down among the children of men, and take upon him the form of man, and go forth in mighty power upon the face of the earth? Yea, and have they not said also that he should bring to pass the resurrection of the dead, and that he himself should be oppressed and afflicted?
In 32 where it says, now, did they understand the law? All right, so first of all, who is they? That'd be the house of Israel, okay, the ones that he's referring to here. He says that they did not understand the law because of the hardness of their hearts. He says, but they understood not that there could not any man be saved except through the redemption of God. It says, that because of the hardness of their hearts, they didn't really grasp the fact that a redemption was needed. That even with laws and rules and ordinances and performance levels, it still wasn't enough for salvation. Right? And so I think that's really just a continuation of what we've been talking about, right? That Israel themselves asked for these laws, the 10 Commandments. Maybe they, in the hardest of their hearts, they thought, okay, give us rules, then we'll keep the rules and we'll earn our own way into heaven by keeping the rules. And saying that's just not how it works, right? That it requires the redemption of God. It requires the salvation that Christ would bring. Right? And then it goes on in 33, it says, for behold, did not Moses prophesy to them concerning the coming of the Messiah? So it's claiming that even Moses would have given a hint that a Messiah was coming, so that even it was called the law of Moses, that he was not thinking that this is the end-all, be-all, and you keep these rules and you make your way into heaven, but rather there would be a Messiah coming, right? So that God could redeem his people. Now, in 34, right, it's saying, they not said that God himself should come down among the children of men, take upon the form of man, and so forth. See, I think the phrase God himself is a key phrase there, right, and could cause confusion, but it's trying to illustrate a point. We think of God in human terms, all right? We try to apply human attributes to God, and God is not a human, right? So because I've heard this kind of thing batted around many times. Well, if it was God taking on flesh, then who was Jesus praying to when he was here? He was praying to God, right? And so if God was here, how could he be there? But that's because we think of it in human terms, right? I mean, God can be everywhere, and so that there is God the Father and God the Son, so that the Father and the Son are both part of the same God. And so so now it says that God himself would come down and take upon himself flesh. That's what it's saying, is that it was a portion of God that became the Son of God, but yet it's all still one God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, all one God, right? So, like I say, it's hard to comprehend and get your arms around it because we think about, I'm one person and I'm here. So if I'm here, I can't be there. But God can be everywhere. So God can be multiple personages, if you will, and still be one God. He's trying to make the point that that this is God we're talking about, right? It's not just a random prophet. It's not just somebody who was a good man, right? Who was picked for a purpose. I mean, this was God himself, coming to earth. So once he does that, he takes upon himself the form of man and so forth, and should bring to pass the resurrection of the dead. How did he bring to pass the resurrection of the dead? He resurrected, right? He resurrected. So once he resurrected, then he made it possible for us all to resurrect.